This story is titled, Mom and Dad Forced Me to Pack My Bag and Move Out, but kept charging rent for little golden brother. I just bought the house instead. Hey Reddit. I need to share a story that's been eating away at me for months now. Maybe someone here can relate or offer some advice, because this situation with my family has become increasingly complicated. Fair warning, this is going to be a long read, but I think it's worth sticking around for. I'm 29 years old, working as an architectural engineer in Sacramento, California. I have an older brother named Lucas who is the absolute definition of a golden child. If you've ever heard that term before, my brother could be the textbook example. My mom treats Lucas like he's God's gift to earth. She's the stereotypical mother who lives vicariously through her son, and she's been this way since the day he was born. He literally can do no wrong in her eyes. Every tiny thing he does gets treated like it deserves a parade and public celebration. Meanwhile, I could discover the cure for cancer, and all I'd get is a dismissive, "That's nice, dear," immediately followed by, "Did you hear Lucas got a B+ in history?" Growing up in our household was just a constant stream of Lucas worship. He always got the best of everything. First pick of all toys, new clothes, parental attention, and he never shared anything. I vividly remember being 5 years old, begging to watch Beauty and the Beast, but Lucas wanted to watch Star Wars. Guess which one we watched? Mom's excuse was always the same. "He's older, sweetie." That was basically the unofficial motto of my childhood. When Lucas finally went off to college, I thought I'd get some peace and recognition at home. Boy, was I wrong. Mom acted like the world was ending, crying constantly about how much she missed her baby boy and lamenting about how empty the house felt without him. Mind you, I was still living there, but apparently I didn't count as company. Mom would call him multiple times daily, send endless emails, and mail care packages every single week. I never received a care package in my life, but Lucas needed one every 7 days because college life is apparently so difficult, right? After college, Lucas got engaged to his longtime girlfriend, Olivia. She's actually a pretty nice person, and I don't have any issues with her personally. But the engagement brought out my mom's crazy behavior to entirely new levels. She acted like it was her own wedding, obsessing over every little detail, picking venues, choosing decorations, and even buying herself a dress that looked suspiciously bridal. Olivia handled it all gracefully, though I could tell she wasn't happy about my mom stealing her spotlight at every opportunity. After the wedding, Lucas and Olivia settled in Chicago, which is pretty far from Sacramento. I thought maybe Mom would finally focus on her own life instead of obsessing over Lucas, but that didn't happen. She just started daydreaming about them moving back to California. Mom has this wild fantasy where everyone is living under one roof, playing happy multi-generational family. She dreams of being a grandmother to a bunch of kids. Never mind that Lucas and Olivia don't even have children yet. Meanwhile, I stayed local for college myself. It made sense financially, plus I wanted to help my parents as they got older. After graduating, I landed a solid job in the city and decided to keep living at home since my job was only 15 minutes away. I figured I'd save money while helping around the house. Looking back, this decision would become the foundation of years of unappreciated sacrifice. My parents mentioned multiple times that they planned to leave me the house someday. Mom would say things like, "One day this place will be yours," or "Your dad and I will move to Chicago to be closer to Lucas and Olivia's kids." That was before they realized no grandkids were coming anytime soon. I've been covering most of the bills for the past few years. My parents retired early. They have some savings, but not enough to cover everything. So I've been keeping the lights on, paying for groceries, and making sure all the bills get paid on time. It hasn't been easy, but I thought I was doing the right thing by supporting my family. It's not like Lucas was contributing anything. He rarely even visits anymore. The last time I saw him was Christmas 2 years ago, and he spent most of his time complaining about life in Chicago. You'd think my parents would appreciate me holding down the fort all these years, but no. Mom just talks incessantly about missing Lucas and wishing he'd move back home. It's exhausting, to say the least. Every family dinner revolves around the same conversation. Do you think Lucas and Olivia will move back? Wouldn't it be nice to have them here? Don't you think it would be perfect? Mom even talks about converting the spare room into a nursery for future grandkids. The problem is, we don't even have a spare room. They turned Lucas's old bedroom into a home office years ago. Speaking of that home office, let me tell you about that whole drama. After Lucas moved to Chicago, Dad decided to remodel his old room. He turned it into a fancy office for Mom, complete with a custom desk, built-in shelves, and the whole 9 yards. Mom uses it for all her hobbies: scrapbooking, writing letters, whatever keeps her busy. For a while, it seemed like she was finally moving past her Lucas obsession. Then Christmas happened. Lucas made some offhand comment about how weird it felt not having his old room anymore. Mom latched onto that comment like a leech and spent the next month trying to convince Dad to turn the office back into a bedroom, just in case Lucas comes back. Fortunately, Dad didn't cave into that particular request. Things were quiet for a while until recently, when Mom started acting strange. She began dropping hints about big changes coming soon and asking weird questions like, "Have you ever thought about living on your own?" One night she casually mentioned that maybe I should start looking for my own place, or perhaps get married or something. At first, I thought she was being supportive of my independence, but something felt off about the whole situation. As the days went by, Mom's hints went from casual to invasive. She kept asking things like, "Do you feel like you're missing out on life?" And "Wouldn't it be fun to decorate your own apartment?" I didn't think much of it until she started leaving rental listings on the kitchen counter. I'm not even joking. Actual printouts with circled addresses, with her handwriting all over them saying things like "great location" and "close to work." It was getting weird, but I didn't confront her right away. I didn't want to believe she was actively trying to push me out of the house that I was financially supporting. Things got clearer when Dad started dropping comments too. Dad's usually the quiet one who keeps to himself and avoids family drama. So when he suddenly started saying things like, "You're not a kid anymore. Don't you want your own space? And you can't live with your parents forever," I knew something was definitely up. He even told me I needed to get married or move out, which seemed like an ultimatum coming from him. For context, I'm 29. Maybe living with parents isn't ideal for someone my age, but I've been doing it for practical reasons. Not because I'm freeloading. I've been paying for everything. The whole setup worked because I've been footing all the bills while they enjoy their early retirement. So why the sudden push for me to leave? Then one night, everything clicked into place. We were having dinner when Mom casually dropped a bombshell. "You know, Lucas and Olivia are thinking about coming back to Sacramento. Wouldn't it be nice to have the whole family together again?" She was smiling like she had just announced the cure for cancer. I didn't react at first because I wanted to see where this conversation was going. Sure enough, she kept talking. "It's just that we don't have much room here anymore," she said, glancing at me like I was the problem. "If they moved back, we'd need to make some adjustments. Maybe turn your room into a nursery someday." I sat there trying to process what I was hearing. My room, the one I've been paying to keep a roof over, was now potentially a future nursery for Lucas's imaginary kids. It felt like a slap in the face, but I stayed quiet. I wanted to hear their entire plan before saying anything. Dad chimed in saying, "It's something to think about. You're doing great at work. You could afford a nice place of your own." I could feel my frustration bubbling up, but I kept my mouth shut. I needed to hear their complete plan before responding. Over the next few days, they kept dropping more hints. Mom brought up turning the home office back into a bedroom again, just in case Lucas and Olivia need it. She started talking about how exciting having a full house would be, completely ignoring the fact that I was already living there. It became clear this wasn't just daydreaming. They were serious about Lucas and Olivia moving in. The part that really stung was how little they cared about my role in all of this. I've been supporting them for years. I'm the reason the mortgage gets paid, the utilities stay on, and there's food in the fridge. Lucas hasn't contributed a single dollar since he moved to Chicago. Now, because he might move back, they're ready to kick me out like I'm some unwanted guest who overstayed their welcome. It's not even about the money anymore. It's how they talk about Lucas like he's the second coming of Christ. Mom keeps going on about how hard it must be for him being so far from family. "He's always been such a family-oriented person," she said the other day, as if the man didn't willingly move states away and barely calls home. Meanwhile, I've been here the whole time doing everything I can to help, and none of that seems to matter to her. What really got me was when I overheard Mom on the phone with her friend. I wasn't trying to eavesdrop, but she was talking loud enough that the whole neighborhood could hear. She was going on and on about how perfect it would be if Lucas moved back and how she couldn't wait for Olivia to help with cooking. I didn't hear her mention me once. Not my name, not my contributions, nothing. It was like I didn't exist in her future vision of the household. The next day, Mom sat me down for what she called a family discussion. Dad was there too, but as usual, he just let her do most of the talking. She started by saying how proud they were and how much they appreciated everything I'd done. It sounded nice at first, but then she pivoted to the real topic, Lucas and Olivia. "We've been talking about how to make this house work for everyone," she said. "We think it might be time for you to spread your wings." I asked her what she meant, even though I already knew. "Well, with Lucas and Olivia coming back, it'll be a little crowded. But we think it's a good opportunity for you to find your own place and start living independently." She said it like it was some great gift, as if pushing me out of the house I pay for was doing me a favor. I stayed calm and asked what they planned to do about the bills. Mom smiled that fake smile of hers and said, "Oh, we were hoping you could keep contributing, just until Lucas and Olivia get settled." Yeah, because that made perfect sense. They wanted me to move out but still pay the bills, so Lucas and Olivia could live rent-free. I don't even know if Lucas has actually agreed to move back, but they're already rolling out the red carpet for him. At this point, it was hard to keep my emotions in check. I asked why Lucas couldn't just get a place nearby if he really wanted to come back to Sacramento. Mom sighed that dramatic sigh she does whenever she thinks I'm being difficult. "It's not that simple. They're going through a lot right now. They need family support. You wouldn't understand. You've always been so independent." She said it like my independence was a character flaw, as if the problem was me not being needy enough. The conversation ended with Mom asking me to think about it and let them know what I decide. I didn't say much because I was too angry to trust myself to respond without exploding. Afterward, I went to my room and started pacing, trying to figure out what to do. I've never felt so hurt and unappreciated in my life. It was like everything I'd done meant nothing compared to the chance of having Lucas back under their roof. Ever since that conversation, I keep going back and forth between being hurt and being furious. It's hard to focus on anything else. Every time I look around the house, I think about how much I've kept things running. The fridge is stocked because of me. The power stays on because of me. The Wi-Fi they use to binge watch shows all day? All because of me. But apparently, none of that matters because Golden Boy might be coming back. For the next week, things at home were weird. My parents were clearly waiting for my decision, but I wasn't ready to give them an answer. They kept acting like nothing was wrong, which made it worse. Mom would be humming while making dinner, asking how work was going, like she hadn't just asked me to uproot my life for Lucas. Dad avoided me mostly, which is typical when things get tense around here. Meanwhile, I started quietly preparing for what I knew I needed to do. I tried figuring out my options. I knew I couldn't keep living in a house where I was treated like an afterthought. Even if I stayed, the dynamic would never change. I'd just be prolonging the inevitable. I started looking for apartments, which wasn't easy. Most places near my work were either outrageously expensive or had reviews that sounded like horror stories. Eventually, I found a small place that was reasonably priced and close enough to work that I could walk there. The idea of no morning traffic almost made me smile despite everything else going on. Once I decided to move, I realized how much I had to do before I could leave. First, I needed to gather all my important documents: birth certificate, social security card, bank information. All of it had to come with me. I wasn't going to give my parents any excuse to hold something over my head later. I started packing my things little by little. I didn't want to make a big scene, so I worked on it late at night when everyone else was asleep. During this time, I also started seeing someone, which made having my own place seem even more valuable. The apartment I found was fully furnished, so I could move in right away. As I was planning all this, I started noticing things I'd never paid attention to before, like how much of the furniture in the house was technically mine. Even the microwave was something I'd picked up during a Black Friday sale when theirs stopped working. The more I looked around, the more I realized how much I had contributed to this house. It just made me angrier. How could they ask me to leave when so much of the place was held together by my efforts and purchases? A few days before my planned move, I overheard another conversation between Mom and Lucas. She was on the phone again, gushing about how excited she was for him to come home. She kept saying things like, "Don't worry about anything, sweetie. We'll figure it all out. And we'll make sure you and Olivia have everything you need." It was like she had already decided I was gone, and Lucas was moving in, even though I hadn't told her anything about my plans. That was the final push I needed to get out of there. The night I moved out was emotional, but not in the way you might think. I waited until midnight to start loading my car because I'm dramatic like that. My parents were asleep, and I wanted to avoid any confrontations. I had already signed the lease on my new apartment. The landlord had given me the keys, and there was nothing holding me back anymore. Packing up my car was surreal. I couldn't believe how much stuff I had accumulated over the years. It felt strange seeing my life reduced to boxes and bags. Once everything was loaded, I sat in the driver's seat for a moment and just breathed. I thought I would feel sad, maybe even guilty, but all I felt was relief. I was finally doing something for myself, and it felt good. Before I pulled out of the driveway, I sent a quick text to Mom. "I've moved out. Bills are your responsibility now. Good luck with that." It wasn't the most graceful exit, but I didn't think they deserved much more than that after how they'd treated me. The next morning, my phone blew up. Mom left tons of calls and messages along with several voicemails, each one more frantic than the last. The first one was just her saying, "What's going on? Did you leave? Call me back." By the third voicemail, she was practically yelling, demanding to know where I was and why I hadn't told her I was leaving. I didn't respond to any of it. I blocked her number. I blocked Dad's number. I blocked Lucas. I even blocked Olivia's number too, just to be safe. I knew they'd try to guilt me into coming back, and I wasn't about to let that happen. Instead, I focused on settling into my new apartment. It was small but cozy, and it already felt more like home than my parents' house ever did. I spent the first night unpacking and setting up my space. It was overwhelming, but also exciting. I finally had a place entirely my own, where I didn't have to walk on eggshells or deal with constant comparisons to Lucas. The next day, I called a few close friends to let them know what had happened. All of them were supportive and couldn't believe how my parents had treated me. One friend even offered to help decorate my new place. It felt good knowing I had people in my corner who actually cared about me. But just as I was starting to settle into my new life, I got a call that threw me off balance. It was from my neighbor back at my parents' house. She wanted to check on me because she had overheard a big fight between Lucas and Olivia the day before. Apparently, they had already arrived at my parents' place, and things weren't going smoothly. After hearing about the fight, I felt a weird mix of relief and dread. Part of me thought, good, let them deal with their own chaos. But another part couldn't stop wondering what was actually happening back there. I tried pushing it out of my mind and focusing on settling into my new life. But family drama has a way of pulling you back in, no matter how hard you try to escape it. My family wasn't done with me yet. A few days later, Aunt Patricia called out of nowhere. She's my mom's cousin, but we all just call her Aunt Patricia. She's one of those people who knows everyone's business and has no problem getting involved, even when no one asks her to. I had been avoiding her since I moved out because I knew she'd side with my parents. Sure enough, as soon as I picked up, she launched into a lecture. No greeting, just straight to, "Your mother is heartbroken, you know. She's been crying nonstop since you left. How could you do this to them?" I took a deep breath and said, "Patricia, I didn't do anything to them. I just moved out. They're adults. They can handle it." She scoffed. "Moved out? You abandoned them when they needed you most. Do you even know what's happening over there?" I rolled my eyes, but something in her tone caught my attention. "What are you talking about?" I asked. There was a pause before she said, "The house. They're behind on the mortgage. Your parents are about to lose it." This was news to me. "What mortgage?" I asked, confused. "They paid off the house years ago." "That's what you think," Patricia said, clearly enjoying the drama. "They took out a second mortgage a couple of years ago. Apparently it was to help Lucas and Olivia. I can't believe you didn't know." My stomach dropped. I didn't say anything at first, too busy trying to process this new information. A second mortgage for Lucas and Olivia? I'd been unknowingly paying it off this whole time, completely oblivious to where my money was actually going. Patricia kept talking about how I needed to come back and fix this mess because family sticks together. I hung up on her mid-sentence, probably the rudest thing I've ever done, but I didn't care. I needed answers, and I wasn't going to get them from her. The next day, I went to the bank. I wanted to confirm what Patricia had said. Part of me hoped she was just exaggerating. But no, she wasn't. The bank teller confirmed everything. There was indeed a second mortgage taken out 2 years ago, with payments being automatically withdrawn from the account I'd been depositing into every single month. All this time, I thought I was just covering utilities and helping with groceries. Turns out, I was also paying for a mortgage I didn't even know existed. The rage I felt in that moment was indescribable. It wasn't just that they'd lied. They'd taken advantage of me for years without a second thought. I had been working hard, budgeting carefully, skipping out on luxuries so I could support them, and they had used that money to bail out Lucas and Olivia. It was like every bad feeling I ever had about being second to Lucas was suddenly validated in the worst possible way. I went home that night and just sat in my apartment. All I could think about was how stupid I'd been to trust them. I kept replaying every conversation we'd had about money. Mom always made comments about how tight things were, but insisted everything was fine whenever I offered to help more. Now I knew why. They didn't want me asking questions about where the money was actually going. The worst part was realizing how much they must have given to Lucas and Olivia. My parents aren't exactly financial wizards, and I wouldn't be surprised if they gave Lucas the bulk of the loan in one big chunk instead of spreading it out over time. Knowing Lucas, he probably blew through it without a second thought about the consequences. I debated confronting my parents about the whole thing, but I wasn't sure I could handle that conversation without losing my temper. Plus, I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of thinking I was coming back to help. They made this mess, and they would have to clean it up themselves. Still, I couldn't help feeling hurt. It's one thing to play favorites, but it's another thing entirely to lie to your kid and use their money to cover your mistakes. Over the next few days, I started getting more calls from family members. Patricia must have told everyone, because suddenly I was the villain of the whole story. My uncle left a voicemail saying I needed to step up and do the right thing. Another cousin texted, calling me selfish for abandoning my parents when they were struggling. According to them, I had left my parents on the verge of homelessness with nothing in their pockets. It was like they were all reading from the same script. What none of them seemed to understand was that this wasn't just about money. It was about years of being treated like I didn't matter, about always being expected to sacrifice for Lucas while he got a free pass on everything. Now they wanted me to come back and fix everything because they couldn't admit they'd screwed up. No thanks. Still, part of me couldn't stop thinking about what Patricia had said about the house being in jeopardy. As much as I wanted to let them deal with the fallout on their own, I couldn't help but wonder what would happen if they actually lost the house. Would they come crawling back, begging for help? Would Lucas step up for once in his life? Or would they all just blame me for not swooping in to save the day? I don't have the answers now, but I know one thing for sure. I'm not going to be their safety net anymore. They burned that bridge the moment they decided Lucas's comfort was more important than my trust. Here's what happened since I last updated. A lot has changed since I found out about the second mortgage and decided to let my parents and Lucas figure things out on their own. I thought I was done with them, but nothing is ever that simple with my family. After weeks of silence from my parents, I got an unexpected letter from the bank. Yeah, the same bank that confirmed the second mortgage situation. It was a notice about missed payments on the house. My parents had been late on payments for months, and now foreclosure was looming. The letter was addressed to me because, surprise, surprise, I was still listed as the primary contributor on their account. I don't know if it was laziness or some messed up manipulation tactic, but they never bothered to remove me from the account after I moved out. I was absolutely furious. It wasn't enough that they lied to me and used my money to bail out Lucas. They also dragged me into their financial disaster. I called the bank to clarify that I was no longer involved. But since payments had been coming from my account for so long, I was technically tied to the mortgage. The representative kindly explained that my parents could lose the house unless the overdue payments were covered immediately. She even asked if I'd like to make a payment right then and there. I almost laughed at the audacity of the situation. At first, I told myself I wasn't going to do anything. I would let the house go and let them figure out where to live. But as much as I wanted to let it all burn, there was a part of me that couldn't let go of the house that was promised to be mine. I grew up there. I put so much money into it, not to mention all the memories it held. Let's be real. If my parents lost the house, they'd just show up at my doorstep, guilt-tripping me into taking them in. Lucas would probably bring Olivia along for the ride too. No way was I signing up for that nightmare. After a lot of thinking and venting to a few friends, I came up with a plan. If I was going to get involved, it would be on my terms. I wasn't about to bail them out without something to show for it. If they wanted to keep the house, it was going to be mine. The next day, I went back to the bank to figure out my options. Turns out buying the house outright was possible, but it would require my parents to transfer the title to me. Basically, I'd become their landlord. The idea was both satisfying and a little scary, but I knew it was the best way to protect myself. If they couldn't handle the responsibility, I'd take it out of their hands. Armed with this plan, I went back to my parents' house for the first time since I left. The atmosphere was tense as soon as I walked in. Mom tried to hug me, but I dodged her and went straight to the kitchen table where Lucas and Olivia were sitting. Lucas was scrolling through his phone like he didn't have a care in the world, while Olivia looked stressed, but didn't say much. Dad was off to the side, pretending to read a newspaper. I laid it all out for them. I told them about the foreclosure notice, the missed payments, and how the bank had contacted me. Mom tried to interrupt with some excuse about how things have been tight, but I shut her down. I don't want to hear it, I said to them all. You lied to me about the mortgage. You used my money without telling me, and now you're expecting me to clean up your mess. Here's the deal. I'll save the house, but only if you sign it over to me. The room went silent. Dad was the first to speak. That's ridiculous, he said. This house is our legacy. You can't just take it from us. Your legacy? I shot back. You put this house at risk the moment you took out a second mortgage to help Lucas. You've done nothing but take advantage of me. Now you're facing the consequences. Either sign it over or lose it. Lucas finally looked up from his phone, glaring at me. You're seriously trying to steal the house? Wow, real classy. You always were jealous of me. I laughed in his face. Jealous of what? Your freeloading lifestyle? Please. I'm offering a solution to a problem you helped create. If you don't like it, feel free to pack your bags and find somewhere else to live. Olivia looked like she wanted to say something, but she held back. I couldn't blame her. It was clear she was stuck in the middle of all this chaos. Mom started crying, of course, but I didn't let it sway me. I've seen this act too many times to fall for it again. It's your choice, I said, standing up. Sign the house over to me or let the bank take it. I don't care which. I gave them a week to decide. During that week, I kept getting calls from Mom, begging me to reconsider. She tried every tactic in the book: guilt, anger, manipulation. But I didn't budge. I told her the same thing every time. I'll take care of the house if it's mine. Otherwise, I'm out. Eventually, they caved. Dad called a few days later, saying they were ready to sign the paperwork. I think the reality of losing the house finally hit them. They didn't want to move, and they definitely didn't want to rely on Aunt Patricia or anyone else for help. Lucas wasn't happy about it, but there wasn't much he could do. Olivia, surprisingly, seemed relieved. I think she saw this as a chance to escape the chaos, even if she didn't say it outright. Once the paperwork was finalized, the house was officially mine. I made it clear to my parents that they could stay as long as they followed my rules. They had to keep up with their share of the bills, and Lucas would have to start paying rent if he wanted to stay. No exceptions. Lucas threw a tantrum, of course. He called me every name in the book and accused me of being selfish and ruining the family. I just shrugged it off. I've spent enough of my life trying to please them. I wasn't going to waste any more energy on his whining. As for my parents, they seemed to accept the new arrangement, but things were definitely strained between us. Mom barely spoke to me unless it was absolutely necessary. Dad kept his distance. I could tell they resented me for taking control, but I didn't care. They had brought this on themselves. It's been a while since my last update, and things have changed a lot. After I officially took over the house, things got tense as expected. Lucas was furious. He called me names, accused me of being greedy, and even tried to guilt-trip our parents into siding with him. None of it worked. They knew the alternative was losing the house entirely, and I think they finally realized how serious I was about not letting them steamroll me anymore. Lucas refused to pay rent. He said it was disrespectful for me to charge him anything and acted like it was beneath him to contribute financially to the household. So I gave him a deadline. Pay up or get out. He didn't believe I'd follow through, but the day after rent was due, I filed for eviction. He threw a fit and packed up to leave, dragging Olivia with him. But Olivia didn't stick around with Lucas for long. A few weeks later, I heard through a mutual acquaintance that she had left him. She got a new job, found her own place, and seems to be doing well. I can't blame her. She was stuck in an impossible situation with him. Good for her for getting out. As for my parents, they've stayed in the house under my conditions. They handle their share of the bills now, though there's still resentment between us. I think Mom's dream of having Lucas and Olivia close by is officially dead, and she doesn't quite know how to handle it. Dad, to his credit, has kept things civil. We're not exactly close, but at least we're not at each other's throats. Honestly, things are calmer now. The house is quiet. I'm finally starting to feel like I have control over my life again. It's not perfect, family relationships rarely are, but I don't regret the decisions I made. For the first time in a long time, I feel like I'm not just a supporting character in someone else's story. That's it for now. Thanks for following this mess. Maybe I'll be back someday with another update, but for now, I'm just focused on moving forward with my life.